be a part of this call was to really hear what it is that people in the Marvell Elaine School District want and what you know about what's currently going on. We're aware that there's some meetings that are coming up next week, but we really want to hear, if you could just imagine without what the state is telling us has to happen, what is it that the people of Marvell and the people of Elaine want as far as your school district, as far as your students, and as far as your schools are concerned? Don't everybody come off mute at once.
Well, I'll start. Well, one of the things that I'm hoping will happen is right now, I think it's unsettling for the Elaine community, and I think the Marvell Elaine School District, and is to kind of be out of the loop of what's happening overall. That's frustrating for me. We literally have parents who are trying to decide what decisions they're going to make regarding their families, and everything is contingent upon what happens with their schools, because you have parents that are just not going to bust their kids any farther than they're busting them now. They're just not going to do it. And if they have to, that means they'll move. They'll leave Elaine. And that's the issue for this community if we continue to lose people who want to be here. Also, just there are some things that are happening, I guess, just being out of the loop of what is going on. Like the meeting, for instance, the meeting that's coming up tomorrow night. We have no clue what that meeting is about, why it was called, why it's being called, what to expect when we get there. We don't have any topic of, we know nothing. And to me, that's an issue for parents, for the community, that the school is having a meeting, unless there's something has changed since I last saw the flyer. Maybe there's something that's changed and someone else has more information. But the last two flyers I saw, it just says a community meeting, Marvell Elaine School District at the high school tomorrow night at 6:00 p.m. from 6 to 7. And if it's another meeting where everyone talks except the people who are impacted by the decisions that they're making, that's a lot of what has been happening since we first learned the schools are going to be closing, is that everyone is having a voice except the people who are going to suffer the most. The parents, the students, not giving opportunities or not having opportunities to speak. And I'm going to ask anyone who has any authority or any power that when these meetings are taking place tomorrow, and then the meeting that is going to be taking place April 13th, that there be some opportunity for people in the community to have a voice. And that has not been happening.
Thank you so much. And for those who've joined the call, if you want to share who you are, that would be really helpful, and what city you're from. We just heard from the mayor of Elaine, who expressed that one of the greatest concerns, at least for a lot of persons that are part of the Marvell Elaine School District, and she's speaking a lot from the Elaine Snow Lake perspective, is that the people that are most impacted by decisions are not being kept abreast of what's going on, not aware of what options are available, and not a part of any decision-making processes. And that, I think, is what I've heard you say, Mayor Gilbert. And also those persons who do know, if there are any persons that are on the call today, for instance, about what the meeting tomorrow might be about, that would be so helpful, because people that are directly impacted are being left in the dark.
My name is Elaine Scaife, and I was on the line, so I wasn't able to unmute my phone. I am a 1987 graduate of Marvell High School. I currently live in Indianapolis, and I'm a member of the Marvell Community Empowerment Incorporation. It's my understanding, I think one of the agenda items for tomorrow's meeting, I believe will deal with the charter school, the Friendship Charter School partnership that they've been having talks with. That's my understanding. I think that that's part of what is going to take place tomorrow at that board meeting. The Friendship representatives will be there. They've already had a meeting with Friendship, I believe on Tuesday of this past week. And they just had a tour of the Friendship Aspire Academy in Pine Bluff on Friday. I personally was invited to do the tour. However, I live in Indianapolis, so at the last minute, there was no way that, I could, make that happen in 2 or 3 days' notice.
Thank you so much for weighing in and letting us know who you are. And it is, I just also want to say it's such a blessing to see people who don't live in Marvell and Elaine calling in from other states, because you love and care about the people that still live there, your community, your family. And that is very encouraging to me as somebody who lives from here from Little Rock. You did bring up something that I think is a part of kind of a white elephant in the room, that the Marvell Elaine School District, and I don't know, let me ask Jeslia if you might set this up to explain that the Marvell Elaine School District not only has been categorized as a level 5 district, but right now there are a lot of laws and laws that will come to play that are kind of shaping what this school district can be, right? So in part, the state is saying that the school district, oh, well, let me stop there. Jeslia, if you'll kind of unpack what I'm trying to say.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So yes, we are basically being shoved with Friendship Aspire Educational School in our faces. Like, that is our only and last hope, which it is not. The legislative period is not over with. Senate Bill 262, it did pass. It has been sent to the governor's desk. So that is waiting on a signature. Hopefully she signs it. If not, it has to go back to the House for the 1/3 vote. And the same goes with House Bill 1504. That bill itself, it has 2 parts in it that applies to our school district. What is the children of Elaine having to travel 40 miles or more to get to school, and us being in a level 5 spot with the state. So with those 2 in that bill alone would save us for having to consolidate. Now, I'm not gonna get on my personal stuff, but with those 2 bills, that could save our school district alone. We wouldn't need Friendship to come in and do anything. The only thing we have to worry about after that is funding our teachers and getting the resources that we need for our students that we once had that we don't have now. That ended us in the situation that we are in now.
So as far as we know, part of, and Senator Elliott, you might be able to speak to some of the options as far as like the School of Innovation and the other options that the Marvell Elaine School District has. So I'm going to pass the mic to you.
Okay, I was going to ask real quickly before I do that, who was anybody who is currently living in the Marvell Elaine area invited to the meeting tomorrow? You all you didn't get notice about the meeting. Some people did and some did not. Am I hearing correctly?
There was a flyer posted on the Marvell Elaine School District Facebook page. Is how yes.
Okay, and the trip that you took that was taken to tour the Friendship Aspire School, who was invited to that? Was everybody invited to that, or was it just?
I last week the superintendent call about me meeting with a tutor that was coming in to help with our children during the week after school. And then she also said that she was doing a district tour. And I said, oh, and so district tour, I thought it meant someone from the school district, our Department of Education or someone like that. And I said, oh, well, you guys going to stop by here or stop by City Hall? At first she said they probably wouldn't have time. I said, oh, please stop by or I'll meet you wherever you are. But they ended up stopping by. They were on a charter bus. And again, I didn't know who or what it was. And I said, oh, I'll ride with you guys. I got on the bus and they started talking and I'm like, wait a minute. And then I said, is this a charter school? That's how I found out that there was a charter school in our community doing a tour. I had no prior warning, wasn't invited to go on this tour. I'll actually force myself to go, I'm like, okay, I'm the mayor, people coming into town. I want to greet them. I want to meet them. And that's how I found out that they, about friendship. And then she did invite me to go on the tour on Friday, but because we were having bad weather, I didn't want to leave town. So I didn't go on the tour.
Okay, thank you for that. I just kind of want to get a sense of how things are and how they've been handled. But I will tell you the other option that Anika Whitfield mentioned could be something called the School of Innovation. There can be a School of Innovation or there can be a complete district of innovation. And that was a language I introduced to get onto the books because there were so many things that were happening where the folks at the local level were really without any options, where they had a major role in what happened in their schools. And also for some areas where there was no issue, they just had an opportunity to say, well, I want to rethink the way this school is run and involve the community, involve, everybody in the community, involved the teachers and the other folks who work in the school district or in a school. It requires the administration, the people who work in the school, parents, businesses, and anybody else that, who plays a major role in the community. It requires all these folks getting together and thinking about, if I were going to start something right now from scratch, what could we do? And that bill allows for you to have that absolute dream about what you would like things to be, working together, starting from scratch. What would you like it to be? And then get on with how you would make it happen. I'm going to just give you an example because I'm not here to try to tell people what to do. In this situation, for example, with the language in the bill of innovation, rather than have kids moving all over the place, and rather than even having somebody else come in to run the schools, if the folks in Elaine, Snow Lake, Marvell got together and said, in the interest of our kids, we want to create a school right where we are that might not look like the kind of school that we all have in our heads. For example, these would be kids at a small site, obviously. And so the whole notion about the numbers of kids who need to be in the school and the district would need to go out the window. And that's something that's possible with this kind of bill. And then you might rethink, we want our kids, if we could offer our kids the best education, what would it look like? Who is willing to teach in our district and not have to move from someplace else if we have the people already here? Because with the salary that we are told we are going to have, anybody who's already teaching might likely remain there because of the increase in the salary. But when it comes to the curriculum, you wouldn't be tied to, we have to teach in a way that ties the hands because of the restrictions and the laws we already have. For example, it is pretty common knowledge, and it still happens in small places like in Alaska, where the first and second grade might be in the same classroom. And that can happen, and you can have an absolutely fantastic kind of education by deciding How do you want to use your time? How, if somebody is 10 years old and they don't need to be in the 3rd grade anymore, move them on. And if we have a situation where somebody's in the 6th grade, doesn't have what he or she needs, you have the opportunity for kids to work together. Sometimes a child can get something over to another child better than somebody else. And I can say this from experience because I'm old enough that I grew up in Nevada County. It is very small. I graduated from a high school that had 9 people in the graduating class, in the whole graduating class. So I'm not making this up. I know this can happen. And we actually had, everybody took it in the 11th and 12th grade. Everybody took 11th grade English one year. And the next year it was fixed. So the next year, everybody took 12th grade English, that kind of thing. And the same thing was true with the kids in the lower grades. There were only 150 kids in the entire school, and from grades 1st through 12. And we had it was organized so that everybody could get educated. It just wasn't, we didn't have the same rules and things that we have right now. That happened in Black schools and in white schools. Because when I was going to an all Black school from elementary school, it was the same way. When I got to the all white school, when I was in the 10th grade, when we had forced integration down my way, I ended up at a school that was even smaller, but it was the same kind of construction so that we could have a high quality, because size can matter when you have a class. So rather than having 6 or 8 people in a class, we had 16, which turned out to be a really good thing. So the size mattered, the way we got a chance to interact matters. And if you decided, if you looked at, for example, there are certain classes or certain things the kids need to know because they're in Marvell Lane, Snowflake area. There are certain things they might need to know. Look at construction of curriculum so that students graduate in a position and prepared to have some thoughts about what would it take for me to remain here, live here, and grow here. That opportunity is there. If you wanted to have, if you wanted your kids to have, say, classes that you don't have there now, this would be a time when we really could use. And I would caution you not to let too much stuff come in as a matter of through the internet or online classes. They will be helpful, but I really caution us by beginning to look at that as the foundation for what will happen here, because these kids need intensive personal contacts. But there are some things, for example, for with little kids who are not afraid, the way most of us are at this point, to learn a foreign language. The kids in Marvell Lane and so forth could graduate or start to learn a foreign language in elementary school, so that by the time they graduate, they actually can speak another language, something that is really key and important, and something that would be important for bringing kids to Lane. So, and the arts, I can see where the arts could be a big thing in the area, because you've got so much rich history there that the arts can be built around. And I'm not here to tell you what to do, as Anika said in the beginning, but it would take some really thoughtfulness and not let yourself be bound by what somebody else has said you may or may not do, and not imagine so that, you know, the best things in the world you want for kids. That's possible. And it would be, the thing that would be really different is you would be setting up something nobody else has done. So you're going to have people question what you do. That's fine. That happens when something new happens, when people have different ideas. But somebody always has to break the surface when it comes to doing something new and different. We didn't have charter schools for years and years and years and years and years. We didn't get charter schools in Arkansas until like 1996. It happened. And now we've gone through all those years of charter schools, and we may or may not have done well. Some maybe have, others haven't. So don't be stymied by somebody saying, oh, well, we've never done this before. But we've also never done before what we are doing to Elaine, Marvell, and Snow Lake. We've not done that either. And but the legislation is there for you to dream on something and then write a plan about what you want to see done, not what somebody tells you you can do. of what you want to see done and go from there. I would really encourage you not to tie your hands, because you just can't imagine that happening for these kids. Just don't do that to the kids. Fight for them. And the way you do that is imagine, write a plan and fight for it.
And I think, thank you so much, Senator Elliott. I want to say that it's hard for me to not say former Senator Elliott.
Yes.
But you know, I think some of the key things that I hope the families here from Marvell and Elaine and even Snow Lake heard is that there is yet another option that is not being presented well, right? And this is already a law that has already been passed. Senator Elliott was a part of this and wanted to make sure that schools and school districts have the opportunity to be innovative. Grassroots Arkansas absolutely supports community schools that we've not really seen in the state of Arkansas the way that we understand them to be. But this School of Innovation would really be like a community school where the community literally defines and helps to construct the type of school structure with which you want your students to attend. And as former Senator Elliott said, it can be and probably should be way out of the box, because the needs for these communities are different than the needs from other communities in the state of Arkansas, and they should not be replicated just because other places in Arkansas do it this way or that way. And so because everybody in Elaine and Marvell and Snow Lake pay state, city, and county taxes, we want to make sure that you understand that you have the right under the law to use this option and to engage in it. And I believe former Senator Elliott, as well as I know the Grassroots Arkansas family, are willing to help if you feel like you need some help with creating that plan. Again, we don't know your community and your neighborhoods the way that you do, but we can certainly be helpful in that structuring. But this is an opportunity for you to present something as a community to the State Board of Education and say, you know, we want to create a school of innovation and we want your help and resources in doing so. So just wanted to step back for a second and see if anybody has any questions about what former Senator Elliott said to us about the School of Innovation and the opportunities that are there. Were any of you all aware that that is another option?
While they're thinking, I'll just say that I guess I grew up or started out school in a school of innovation. I was in a classroom that had 4 grades in it. And I went to school like that for 3 years. I wait until the 4th grade I got in a classroom with all students on my grade level and everything. But I think that's a good option, good idea. I would hope that, because a school of innovation like that would work in both towns. It's not like it would have to be a combined town thing like they have now. I'm curious about how do you get to the point of introducing the concept? That's what you want to do.
Are you asking me? I'm sorry. Are you asking me?
I guess Joyce.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, the first thing to do would be to get a copy of that bill, and we need to read it and talk about it and discuss it, because there are some things, I don't want to mislead people and think you can just, throw everything away because you can't. For instance, you do have to pay teachers according to the Cyrus schedule. You can't just make people work, all kind of hours and stuff beyond that school day. So I'm not saying all that, but the thing to do would be to get that bill and get an understanding of it and start thinking about, within these confines, what can we do? If there's something in the bill that you can't do, you can ask the State Board of Education for a waiver, because we have waivers going all over the place to school districts right now. So that would be the thing for you to do. but become familiar with it. And I don't know if I can do something to help you become familiar with it, that's fine. But I really do think, I feel very strongly, I will be helpful, but I don't think it's right for anybody from the outside to come and try to run your business, as Anika said at the very beginning, because I respect the people in the area, to think for themselves. But since I sponsored the bill and got it passed, and as a matter of fact, there's a group that who are big supporters of charter schools, asked me not to run that bill because that person thought it would hurt charter schools. And I said, well, we've been looking for different ways for schools to be stronger and families to have more to say about what happens. And we're always saying schools are not innovative. I'm going to run this bill. So I know it pretty intimately because I worked on it a long time. As a matter of fact, I know that the former Secretary of Education, Johnny Key, I think maybe he might be a co-sponsor with me on that bill. I know we had worked on it some together. So it was not like I was driving the car off the cliff. So it's something that is very sound. There is, for your information, there are schools of innovation around the state now and districts of innovation. I think most of them have not dreamed as big as they should and innovated as much as they could. So you could set something up that somebody else, it might even want to consider for their districts. Because I think this has the possibility to be a North Star in this state. If it can happen, in Marvell Lane, Snowflake, other people will start to look and say, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? Somebody has to turn on this bright light. And I think it could be the folks in this area.
And for people who are following in the chat, I went ahead and dropped in the chat from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education with the Arkansas Department of Education, the link for the application for the Schools of Innovation. I also put in there school districts that have already become Schools of Innovation or individual schools out of school districts. And you'll see that the largest school district in our state right now, which is Springdale, they were some of the first to become Schools of Innovation.
That's right.
And so yep. You will see that there's a long list of school districts that have applied and been able to get resources that come with being a school of innovation as well.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
And
if the State Board of Education come back and says, well, you're at this point now, we have to consolidate you or annex you to another school district. You could still, all that school district would need to do is, okay, they might be a part of I'll just choose someplace because I'm not suggesting anything because I don't know enough to do that. They might be a part of, say, Brinkley or Barton, but don't forget, Brinkley or Barton, neither one of them would have to change anything. So they wouldn't have this excuse that they've got to do something else in their schools. Because remember, the reason I wrote it so that it was schools of innovation or districts of innovation. So we would have that very option that we have because to keep everybody in the district from having to change if they didn't want to. Anything else? So get the bill. You've got the information that Ms. Whitfield put it. You've got those two pieces of information. How to go about it. Some school districts that already are doing it, but I don't think anybody's doing it to the point that I had envisioned that folks would really get on this and go, wait a minute, I want a world-class school system for my kids, and this is what it's going to have to take. Not just looking around just to see what other people have, but for you thinking about what do you want for your kids. If you look at, I would really encourage looking at, I think our kids need to be prepared to compete on the world stage. And I think that's what we ought to be looking to for the future for our kids, not just what they did here and did there, because when you get down to it, as Anika mentioned earlier, might not be the same thing, might not be even what you want, but these countries, there are countries that are about the size of Arkansas, like Finland and Estonia and several others, Japan, all these schools in these countries that are always at the top of the chart. That's my dream for our kids in Arkansas, not just to be like Texas or be like Massachusetts, anybody else, but just be in a position where when somebody says, this is where I graduated from, or my kids are in this school, everybody else would want it for their kids too, because we've done that good of a job in positioning kids to be ready for what the future is. Not our future, but theirs. That's the thing as far as I'm concerned.
And I just want to reiterate, thank you so much. I just want to reiterate that we all pay taxes, and these are not handouts. These are our tax dollars working for us. And so just want to really encourage us to remember that even though the state is saying these things about the Marvell Elaine School District, understanding about the superintendent sadly transitioning within the last year, with there being a turnover of superintendents, with there being positions that were not available, with the state recognizing that they pulled away some programs and some funding that the Marvell Elaine School District needs, realizing that we've heard as Grassroots Arkansas, we've heard over and over again from people from Elaine and Snow Lake, as well as Marvell, how painful it is to watch students have to travel almost an hour to go to school one way every day, and to show up at school sleep or asleep on the bus, and to have to wake them up, and then to expect them to perform well after having to travel back home an hour. So again, looking at the full picture and saying, what is it that we really want? What do we deserve? What should we be able to have in our cities? And let's make that happen is something that, we're offering you to consider, and recognize that it's an option for you, that it is absolutely your right to request it and to draw up a plan. I feel like Go ahead. I feel like a few people outside of Grassroots wanted to come in and say something. So I wanted to ask if anybody wanted to say something.
Yes, this is Anna Huff Davis and Gregory Davis. I need to make sure I understand what this alternative is. I don't know anything about schools of innovation. So it's a very new concept to me, Dr. Elliott. And so my understanding is that even if the district, if the State Department of Education says that we have to consolidate, would it be with whatever district that's nearby? If we do, we can still become a school of innovation at the, who would grant us that permission? Would it be the consolidating district? Would it be the State Board of Education? I heard you say that we could get a waiver from the state board, right? What does that, if for instance it's Brinkley, does Brinkley also have to give us permission?
It will depend on what the language says for the annexation. And it's possible, it's very possible that they would, if the language is strong enough with the annexation, that Brinkley has a lot of authority over what happens there. But that's where you would need to ask about a waiver from some of that authority. When somebody says you can't do something, always ask for a waiver, because other schools get it all the time.
And I ask that because I'm trying to make sure I understand who is going to be in control.
Well, when it's a school of innovation, if the State Board of Education has said Brinkley's going to run this school, Brinkley would be the one who was actually allowing what could happen and could not happen though with the School of Innovation. But as we are doing something brand new, the state board could actually have a lot of authority. So much of this is going to be about the state board. We will annex these schools to Brinkley with the understanding that these are going to be schools of innovation. And that leaves a lot of the authority where the folks are in Elaine and Marvell and Snow Lake, leaves a lot of the authority there. And if somebody tries to squeeze you too much on having that authority, just what we're not trying to replicate, be sure you keep reminding people. we're not trying to replicate or do what people are doing in Brinkley. Because what this is an arrangement so that the kids do not have to travel all these miles, do all the things that are not good for them for getting an education, and do this instead. So the state board would actually have to give an okay to all of this because of the annexation piece that is likely to happen. They could just leave you alone too, by the way.
Okay.
Which would probably be the best thing, just leave you. But I was just bringing that up in case you don't want to ask for an annexation. But I was just trying to think ahead in case there is an annexation. Don't let that be a reason for you not to consider to pursue the schools of innovation, because that will give the communities a lot of authority over what's happening with their kids.
Can we hear more from people from Marvell and Elaine about what it is that you want? What do you desire for your school district? We've heard that you want to be a part of decision-making processes. Go ahead.
I'm a parent. My name is Taisha Williams. I would like to see quality education for the kids. You know, I would like to see maybe more homework come home and more hands-on learning with the kids instead of the virtual learning. More hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Got you. And I understand that there were some programs before, like some freedom schools and some other additional programs that were part of the Marvell Elaine School District that are no longer there. But again, I don't want to narrow the focus, but I just literally, if money was not an option, what is it that you really want for your school district?
And I know you're asking for people who haven't spoken, but I want
everybody.
after school tutoring, in school tutoring, recruitment of teachers, certified teachers, and this is Anna again. A lot of those things that you just mentioned, Dr. Whitfield, those things that we were doing before that worked, that we're no longer doing. We don't have those things anymore. So I'm assuming it was because of finances, because Jessela and I had this conversation a couple of times.
Like science fairs and stuff like that. I feel like you should make learning interesting for the kids and make parents want to get involved.
And Taisha, I didn't want to speak for you, but I know that they had some, Bridging the Gap meetings, and Taisha asked for a PTA to create, form a PTA. And I think she might have asked twice. And no one would have, they wouldn't get back with her. And currently, some of my conversations have been, we understand that it's Marvell Elaine School District, but because of the travel, because of the lack of, access, transportation after school, can we have some of those tutoring, after school tutoring programs here in Elaine? We have the space for it here. So that's what, after, a little bit of insisting, that's finally started. Well, we only have a few weeks left, but that seems like that's going to come about for a couple of months, until school gets out, and we'll have some after school tutoring, a couple of days a week.
I have a question for Dr. Elliott.
I need to say this real quickly. I'm not Dr. Elliott. People call me that all the time. I don't want to start something that's not right.
I'm sorry,
No,
Miss
it's
Elliott.
not you.
I started that.
I think people get me mixed up. That's not a problem. I think people get me mixed up with Dr. Elders because she's named Jocelyn Elders and I'm named Joyce Elliott. I think that's where it comes from. But you go ahead. I didn't want to be a fraud.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know you talked about the School of Innovation or the District of Innovation,
Mhm.
but I just heard you say something about not to annex, not to mention that you want to annex when those were the two choices
Mhm.
initially before we heard about the School of Innovation. Though that was the choices, annex or to consolidate. So
Mhm.
can you explain to me why you would say not to annex?
No, I can't tell you not to annex what I said, or at least what I absolutely meant to say. That's what I was saying. Those are the choices the Department of Education will make. Either they will annex the school or consolidate it with somebody else. So what I'm cautioning folks about is don't ask for annexation unless don't you ask yourself, because you want to be in a position to decide without anybody else interfering, to have that authority to do it. But if you're going to be annexed because the law does require that from the Board of Education, I'm thinking they're probably going to, that's what they're probably going to suggest. But when they do, I just wanted to be clear that that's just because you're annexed. That doesn't mean the board should have to put all of the authority of what happens in a School of Innovation with the school district annexed to. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Mhm. I want to say one more thing too, because none of this will work unless we are working on the community as well. One of the reasons in the bill that it's required that folks in the community and business folks who are leaders and just folks who care, one of the reasons the community is involved, the idea behind a bill like this for our kids to have top quality world-class education is not for them to leave. It is not for them to leave. They may choose to, but the idea is to, at the same time, we are looking at growth in the area so that because kids can be a part of the growth. What we do right now, mainly in Arkansas in general, we put a whole lot of money in schools. We do. One of the reasons we're not as successful with all that money is at the same time, right along with the money we are putting in schools, we are not, as a state and many times as a region, investing in quality of life so that the kids are not getting educated, looking forward to leave, but to be a part of that growth and quality of life. And whatever, if you choose to do this, that needs to be part of a plan. Because for years and years and years, I've tried my best to get this state to think about what, if you're okay with where you live, for example, what do you have that the folks in this area don't have? Okay, you name it. Then it's not a big secret. People say it's so hard. No, it's not. What do you have for quality of life where you live? And then go, okay, they don't have it. So that is really crucial, because if we don't, the quality of life that kids have, most kids are going to be affected by that, whether or not they can be the best they can be in school. The things just go together. But for the life of me, and I think it's just, we like to be able to put the money in the schools and not think about kids don't live there all the time. If we don't invest in their lives outside of that school, then chances are things are not going to go well and remain and be sustained. That's why because when you look at schools where they constantly have an A school, look at their surroundings. Somebody's invested in that, including you and me, because we pay taxes that go to other places. We just don't have the structure set up so that it comes back to our places. And that's what we need to ask for as well. Because otherwise they'll just say, you got money and look at you again, you still are failing. What? I mean, come on. If you don't have housing where you can recruit people to come there and work and stay, if you don't have a restaurant, if you don't have great internet, and it absolutely must be where people can move there and work from home or whatever and be a part of the community. These are the things these other folks have if they're constantly doing well. And they like to take, especially poor folks, say, we gave you all this money, all this, but you didn't address those things that are about a person's quality of life. That is crucial. Don't let folks get away with just money to the schools.
And also, I want to share, as far as the students, it's so critical to find out, what it is that they want and need, because they are they are the most impacted out of this, right? And
Yeah.
so we don't ever really want to have community meetings. Grassroots Arkansas has always been very adamant and intentional about making sure that our students are involved in what we do and how we organize. And so we just want to encourage that as well. And we understand that there's some not apathy, but mainly frustration of feeling like there is no other choice. And we wanted to come and offer to you that because you pay taxes, because you are a community that loves your students, because you are a community that has been committed all of these years since 2006, when you were consolidated, to try to work together as 2 or 3 cities working in one district. There's so much reason, and from our perspective, looking out and looking into what's happening, for you to stand up and say, not our children, not our cities, not our schools. These belong to us. These are our children. These are our schools. This is our community. And we just want you to know that we're here to support you. We have some financial resources to help with transportation for those who are wanting to go to the Marvell meetings that are being held there as the Marvell Lane School District. We also are securing legal supports. We have some attorneys that have been more than willing to help us with legal advice as we need it, as well as, if it comes a time that there needs to be some legal challenge. We have at least one attorney in the state of Arkansas who has said that he's willing to help. And we're working on some national attorneys to assist as well. So I know people are kind of being quiet, which sometimes makes me uncomfortable because I want you to share. And this is really a great opportunity to just, say what do you want? And again, we're here to try to help you to do that.
Well, Anika,
Mhm.
the meeting that's coming up next week.
Tomorrow. Mhm.
No, the state board meeting.
Oh, April the 13th.
Right.
Okay.
There will probably be an opportunity for the citizens to make statements and everything. I would hope that the issues are streamlined enough so that they're not spread out over a lot of areas, particularly in a personal area. Now, I can see if I was a parent down there in Snow Lake and my kid was coming to school up in Marvell, they couldn't make me sit down, and I'd be trying to make my own case for that. But I know that it's easy for people maybe not to all try to put together what their issue is, but I think that the board needs to hear the basic issue. Get back off our school district.
Right.
I don't know what kind of laws will be out by that time, but as it stands today, I think they need to understand that that's what the people want.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with you. I would just back it up to say that before April the 13th, before they've shown up at the board meeting with their decision in hand, I think it's critical that members of the community come together as a community, making phone calls to the Department of Education, to the school board, or what is it? This Arkansas Department of Ed. Elementary, no, it's the board members is what I'm trying to say. Because right now the board is overseeing the Marvell Lane School District because the school district is under level 5, and that was a decision that was made, I believe, back in November or December. So it is the State Board of Education, that each of those members need to hear as often one band, one sound. Like you said, Miss Helen, not only take your hands off, but we have plans for our district. And we need you to help us achieve these plans, but not by harming us, by annexing us, not by harming us, by consolidating us, but by allowing us to be a school district that operates the way that is going to be best for people living in Marvell, people living in Elaine, and people living in Snow Lake. And I think, again, I could be wrong, and Jeslia, you and Mayor Gilbert share, but I think prior to that meeting, that has to be heard, and that those plans need to be fleshed out, Bill.
So there needs to be a meeting before the meeting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's how they operate.
And
Yes.
even
Yes.
even with that meeting, we're talking about the April 13th meeting, but the meeting tomorrow night. I heard someone say that I think it was Miss Gilbert saying that we don't know what this meeting is for. Does anyone on this call have any idea?
Ms. Schaaf, go ahead.
Again, I said, I think this meeting has to do with the Friendship Charter Organization.
Okay.
I do believe that they will be there at that meeting. Like I said earlier this week, the school board had a special meeting with Friendship. And then after the special meeting, they had this tour. Marvell went and toured the facilities out, the Aspire, Friendship Aspire out in Pine Bluff on Friday, which I was invited to. So in some of the articles that I read and things of that nature, made me believe that this meeting will be about.
They invited everybody to the school board meeting that night. They said if you wanted to come. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So yeah, that's my understanding, that I believe that's what that meeting will be about. Is I just, my gut tells me that they will be introducing some type of a partnership with that charter school. That's what my gut tells me.
So Ms. Scape, you're saying that the district may be proposing a partnership with Friendship Academy with based on that meeting, that tour, because they did open it up for anybody who wanted to go on that tour that day at the last board meeting. But I wasn't able to go either. I was out of town.
Yes, well, and like I said, and then they had a special meeting, I believe, on Tuesday of last week with the Friendship representatives.
Okay.
And just some of the articles that I read, the article indicated that as a result of the board meeting that we had in Little Rock on March the 9th, it was a heartfelt meeting from just to hear the community speak and with passion and things like that. So the CEO, Mr. Joe, indicated that he received lots of text messages and phone calls and things like that. Even as high up from the governor's office, he received communication directing him to contact the Marvell Lane School District. So
can I tap in for just a second and say Grassroots Arkansas makes no excuses, but advocates strongly for public education and public schools for a reason. And this particular charter school is one that is very proud to share that the Walton Family Foundation has helped to fund them and bring them here. And for those who don't know, the Walton Family Foundation has also funded a school of reform that is at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville. That school of reform essentially was created to circumvent the typical or the traditional, I should say, teacher education process for certification. And so what they try to do is encourage more of a Teach for America style, a alternative style of educating students. And we're talking about a business that makes money primarily by bulk. Their mentality is bulk commodities, right? And so public schools and public education for them is yet another way to create private funds for themselves at the cheapening, at the weakening, at the lessening of education for students, as we have an opinion, as we've seen it. You can go to New Orleans and see the impacts and the effects of how they took over at a very weak point in New Orleans when I believe it was Hurricane Katrina that came in, and very shortly thereafter, they swooped in and a lot of charter schools came in and they essentially have taken over all of their public schools. Charter schools people might not be aware of, they are not required by law because it's a private public entity. They're not required to have persons elected to represent the constituents of those schools. Therefore, there is no requirement to have a school board. Most charter schools do not have elected school boards. In fact, I don't know any that do, but most do not have elected school boards. And those that have boards are usually people that they have hired to essentially make sure that their schools are financially solvent and or are producing money. So charter schools actually make money, right? Whereas public schools were not created to be money makers. And if there are at the end of a school year, if there are positive revenues, again, those go back into the school district for the benefit of the schools, whereas private schools, there's very little accountability as to where that money goes.
What about the teacher certification? Are they required to be certified?
Most charters have waivers to prevent them from having to have certification for teachers.
Right.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Also, in the private schools do not pay as well as public schools, and they have fewer benefits for their employees, fewer or no benefits. That weakens your local economy. And it's not a good thing. But businesses look at public schools as a good investment because everything is secured with a first tax lien on every piece of property in the district, which makes it a very, very safe investment, very desirable investment for businesses, but is very, very bad for local people. And if you are unhappy, you can't call your local school board. You have to call the State Department of Education or the corporate office, and you're not going to get, not as likely to get a satisfactory result.
Right. And there are very few private only, because again, remember, charter schools are private public. So they benefit from being private entities as well as getting public tax dollars. But when you do look at a solely private school, many of them have huge stadiums and athletic facilities, because that's one of the ways that they are able to get a lot of revenue as well. And so it is not uncommon for some of the charter schools, but more so the private schools, private solely, to try to get students from public schools that are academically, but more importantly, what's the word? Not, I don't want to say physically fit, but athletically, thank you. Athletically exceptional. And so I don't really want to get into too much more about them, but I want people to be aware of what charter schools are. If you're not aware of the damages that the Walton Family Foundation has done to public schools, not just in Arkansas, but in New Orleans and in other states, how there has been a national drive to try to overturn the attacks on public schools and public education that billionaires like the Waltons have been benefiting from by hiring organizations to be their face in communities. And a lot of times they hire people that look like the community members.
Yeah. Mhm. Most definitely.
It is also very important to make the record from the beginning that this would not have happened in this way if this were not a community primarily of color. That's why no one lets you know about the meetings. The people who are deciding to have the meetings look different. They are not different. They just think they're different. They think differently.
Right. And even if those persons that are calling the meetings now are people who represent the majority of the people that are in the community, a lot of times those are not the true decision makers. So yeah. So it
I
is.
hope those who are able to go to the meeting tomorrow night will go. At least get some more information about what's being offered, but don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Well said, Miss Helen.
Okay.
Yes. So we do want to encourage the realities of some of the things that have been brought up again by having conversations with members of the community in Marvell and Elaine, that obviously this school district serves predominantly African-American students. It serves students that have to travel a significant amount of time one way to get to school every day. It has been underserved as it relates to certified educators, and it has been stripped of a lot of educational enhancements and supports and resources. And we know that the very first thing that I mentioned is a big part of why. And the state is aware of that, because there are other small school districts, to include charter districts, that have less than 350 people, and they're not suggesting that they be consolidated or annexed. And like I said, those can be charter districts as well as other public school districts. So there's a reason why they're picking on Marvell Elaine. And unfortunately, part of it is because they don't believe that the Marvell Elaine people will fight back and stand up for what they deserve and want and need. And we're just encouraging you to not let that dream of theirs come true.
So one last question that I have. How do this meeting tomorrow night, if it's for us to hear about Friendship Academy or whatever it's called, and though that visit that was made or the tour that was conducted, and the board seems to feel that this isn't a viable option, what do we do? Because they may decide that, and I know we need to call our board members.
Right. So I think the answer to that, and I want former Senator Elliott and Jeslia and Mayor Gilbert to weigh in, but I would say that the answer to that is to simply say, well, this is not really what we want. What we want hasn't been offered to us. We want to remain the Marvell Elaine School District, and we want to figure out how we can do that under the law. And it looks like one of the ways that we could do that would be to create our own schools of innovation as a district or as individual schools within the district. And that has not been presented to us, and we would like to pursue that. We would like to have the help of the district leaders and to include the board as well as the superintendent, the school administrators, to help us to move forward in looking at ways to do that and to present that before April the 13th to the Arkansas Department of Education. And I think you have every right to ask and request of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that is right, because as I've said on here a number of times, I'm not here to try to tell you what to do, but to provide information. And I think you have the right to ask that of anybody. Like, for example, if I'd come on here and start telling you what you're going to do, somebody should have unplugged me right away, because that's not my place to do that. I think the same thing is true in this instance, because the highest thing you can do for a community is respect that community enough to at least make sure they are a part of what's happening to them. We're not, nobody here is a baby, and people have been through the toils and the good and the bad times, of the area. And the way it grows forward should have everything to do with the input from the community. And obviously there may be some people who know, but obviously there are people on here who really care, and you've not been contacted. But I think what Anika said is exactly right, because you might get into the School of Innovation and decide you don't want to do it. But I think it really would be a problem if you didn't explore it. So it makes sense to me for you to say there is something else we want to explore. And I've been around a lot of charter schools and observing what's been going on for years and years and years. And I suggest what you're going to be told is you will get the discussion about the zip code, which is a most offensive thing to me. You're going to hear how everybody cares about your kids so much and they should not be trapped in these schools. That's offensive because you are not willing to do anything about the conditions that are causing them to be trapped in these schools, as they call it. And it's offensive also too, just because my community might be suffering, but we're not a trap. We're the one thing that's holding up the light for our kids. So be aware that when somebody starts talking to you, and it's going to sound really good, we are here to make sure your kids have the same opportunities as everybody else. It's not right for them to be trapped here, quote, in these quote unquote failing schools. Well, the people who are responsible for that, everybody should have a part. But keep in mind, the state is responsible for our schools. And then they'll say, well, that's why we are going to put you under the direction of whatever charter school. And I think at that point, you need to demand, okay, just what is it these folks are going to do? What's the track record? You went on a tour, and what do we know? And I will just say to you, I don't care what school has an A, B, C, D, F rating. That rating is not going to be something that if they were an A school, we probably, and I've seen it, we're not doing the kind of things we need to do for our kids at any rate, for them to be prepared for their world. Because the way we go about getting A, B, C's, and D schools has everything to do with the community, whether the community is a struggling community or not a struggling community. So what charter schools or anybody else can do is sweep in and say, well, we're going to do this, this, and this. We just do not have solid evidence that charter schools have been the best for most kids. And we don't have that evidence. And we will say, this is an A school, this is a B school. But then when you look at the conditions that kids are transferred from many times to a charter school, or a charter school is dropped in an area, all the things our kids need to be successful in the world are not there. Because it's hard to keep dividing up the state money and keep making more and more schools and think everybody has enough money to do the job. That's why I am so high on our public schools having the money to do what they need to do, because that's what the Constitution charges us to do. Think about it like this. If you had a home and you were having issues keeping your home up, maybe you're all of the utility bills and all of the things you have to do for maintenance. What you would do is not go out and buy another home and split some money over there and say, now we've got it fixed. Some of the family go live over this house, we're calling the good house. Now, what you're going to end up with probably is two houses, two homes where nobody's getting the resources that they need. And so that's one of the big problems with charter schools. And now it's also a problematic in our regular public schools, because we're taking the money and just dividing it all over the place. Now, the people who make money make out well, but the money we need is for our kids to have a great education. I'm not here to down anybody. I would just suggest that when it comes up, tell us why it's such a great deal and what has this school done that we should not try something different from the regular public schools and from the charter schools. Ask those questions. And because when we talk about this zip code thing, one of the things I suggested to you, if you go down this road, it's not about getting kids out of their zip code. The economic development side of it is what addresses the zip code. The kids ought to be able to live in their zip code and have people invest in their zip code the same way we do for other people, like the ones who own the charter schools. They live in great zip codes. It's not because they are rich all the time. It's because we're investing in those zip codes. So I always say, it's not when people come to me with that, well, then if the zip code is the problem, let's fix the zip code so kids can live in their zip code. Why do our kids have to be taken out of their zip code to have opportunity? Or have somebody come in, with a big dog and pony show for our zip codes to be fixed, but only the schools. We don't want our kids just leaving our zip codes. We want them to live there, get a great education there, and live there if they choose to, and not have to go someplace else. If all we do is educate them and not address quality of life where they are, we're not doing them the favor we think we are. So y'all, good luck tomorrow night, but stand your ground. You really said these are your kids. Don't be shy. Even if your knees shake, you get up and you talk anyway. If your voice quivers, you get up and you say what you need to say anyway.
Yes.
Because the kids don't have anybody else to speak for them. They're yours. My sermon is over.
No, I was going to say, let's pass out the collection plate. That was wonderful. So time is drawing nigh, and I do want us to wrap up the call unless someone else has something to say. But I want to leave, I see some of the things that are in the comments as it relates to the school board members, and remind us that whether you elected these members or not, they are there to represent the voices of the community of Marvell, Elaine, and Snow Lake. And if what they're saying does not represent you, you have every right to let them know that you're not speaking for me. You're not speaking for my neighbors. You're not speaking for people who wanted to be here and couldn't be here to say this. So if again, they haven't been listening or responding, it's our right. It's our responsibility to encourage people to listen, to not give them an opportunity to do anything but hear us. And we do that not with our mouths closed, but with our mouths open. We do that by picking up the phone and calling. We do that by maybe, even having dinner or breakfast to say, listen, I know you might not hear me in this public setting when I was talking to you last night, but I want to reiterate because maybe you didn't hear me over the loudspeaker, or maybe somebody was coughing too much, but say it publicly so it's a matter of record, so people can hear how you feel and what it is that you want and need. You have every right to do that.
Well, good night, everybody. It was nice to meet some of you and the rest of you. Just good to see you. And
Yes.
Thank you, Senator.
you're very welcome.
Yes.
Thank
And thank
you.
each of you all for coming on the call tonight. I know your hearts are heavy, but please be encouraged. And we're here. Mayor Gilbert has my contact number. Jesla has mine as well. Again, we're here to help however we can be supportive.
Good night.
Good night,
Good night.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.